should bear. Just to outrun one or two soldiers here and there, make sure the body bags come home, and all of a sudden, Russian support for this in the country is going to go downhill quick. It's another option on the table here. NATO seems worried. AP's reporting this morning, NATO vows to defend its entire territory if the Russian attack. They triggered urgent consultations under Article 4 of NATO's founding Washington Treaty. Article 4 is launched when the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any NATO parties is threatened. Article 5 obviously involves an attack. It's clear the NATO countries are concerned. Now, NATO, which was called out by Donald Trump, I believe rightfully so, many times, these NATO countries need to step up. Don't you find it slightly unfair that the United States has supported NATO with a significant portion of its GDP towards its military services in the region, while countries directly threatened by Russia in Eastern Europe themselves have done nothing of the sort? We've given about 3 to 5% of our GDP over the years, and NATO countries who are supposed to give more have given about 2, if not less. Maybe it's time for the Europeans to get serious about security in their own backyard. And no, it's not unfair to talk about that right now. It is perfectly appropriate. You want to invoke Article 4 and potentially Article 5, God forbid there's attack. Well, what are you going to attack back with? Spent decades letting your militaries lie fallow. You're not investing.
Yo, that's why, like, I listen to right-wing media as entertainment, right? Because you can't take these people seriously. This guy is gonna say, this is news radio. I don't really pay attention to news radio. I was going to work one day and they were pretty much just for the weather. I was listening for the weather, so I was like, okay. Right-wing media, because it was saying a lot of crazy shit. So I was like, let me give it a listen, right? Give it a listen. I'm only recording it now. He said a lot of crazy shit. These, all of a sudden, for the sake of Donald Trump, their leader, their czar, their king, all Republicans now are pro-Russia, right? And even if they're not pro-Russia, let's say, okay, they're not pro-Russia, right? But they keep making excuses for Russia, right? They keep making excuses for Putin, or they straddle the fence when it comes to Vladimir Putin and his intentions in Ukraine. This guy just said, before I started recording, saying, hey, look, Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. If he wants to take over, who knows? We'll see. We don't know what his true intention is. I'm like, what? You don't know what his true intention is? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? First, he made a stupid trope about, of course, they can't get over Obama. They say, oh, you're talking about all the sanctions that Biden sent against Ukraine, which is a small measure. Biden didn't go hard as far as like all the sanctions that he could put towards Russia, right? But he said, unless you're giving, the commentator on the radio said, unless you're giving people cash like Obama. I'm like, what the hell? No president gives people just cash straight up. Anyway, it's the fact that these guys are saying, hey, we don't know what the intention of Vladimir Putin, and they're putting the blame on NATO. And anyone look at that follows what's going on, they had a lot of U.S. intelligence said, well, basically, that's what Putin's going to do. This is not something he did on a whim, right? This is something that Putin was going to do, right? So that's what American intelligence is saying, right? Had nothing to do with NATO. Even if it had to do, this is just crazy. I was making this a little short right now. I'm going to dive into, for the, get a little more detail into it right now. I just want to make this little quick video because all I'm hearing from conservatives are excuses, propaganda, and finger pointing where some don't need to be finger pointing. It's like, oh, look at that right there. They got nothing to do with the topic. Then they want to expunge on the distraction and give themselves a W. Like this is crazy. Like this guy in this like that's why no one listens Anyone that's intelligent, that got
Remember the words.
3 brain cells, most of the time is not going to listen to right-wing media because it's not based in any facts. It's not based in any reality. It's all emotional. Like, deal with what's going on, speak the truth, and then give your comments. Then fine, okay, you know what? At least the guy said the truth, he spoke the truth, but he disagrees with it, whatever. I understand disagreeing with your commentary, but what right-wing media does, they lie about the whole news article. They lie about what's going on totally, then they give their commentary based upon their false information. That's the thing that drives me crazy. Anyway, whatever, man. Welcome. This is a Black Critique. I really didn't want to talk about this whole, Russia-Ukraine thing, because it is important and things like that, but to me it's not as important to really do a video about it. And I'm doing a video about it because, as you can see, my rant earlier today, it was just driving me crazy. Like, that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm on social media and I'm seeing a lot of people being dishonest, obviously Republicans, being very dishonest about the whole situation, about Trump's role in it, about blaming Joe Biden specifically. He's the sole person that's responsible for what Vladimir Putin is doing and all this other stuff. It's like, what? Like, are we talking about the same thing? Are we looking at the same thing? Are we seeing the same events that's taking place? So you have a lot of Republicans right now, like I said in my rant, that they're either straddling the fence or pointing a finger somewhere else that has no relevance. So, like, oh, Hunter Biden. I'm like, okay, you want to talk about conflicts of interest, but you don't want to talk about conflicts of interest on the other aisle. And we know if there was something really illegitimate about Hunter Biden, Donald Trump would have did something. But he didn't do it because he had no legal precedent. And if he really had a legal precedent into doing it, he would have done it. If not, he would have just fired his DOJ like he did with Jeff Sessions and anyone else that doesn't agree with him. So you got a lot of Republicans, they have to point the finger and do distraction and muddy the water up in order for him not to be accountable. But it's like trying to defend Donald Trump and the Republican Party is like being in a boat, right, with someone who keeps drilling holes in it. You plug something up, then he goes make another hole somewhere at starboard. Then you cover the one at starboard, then he makes another one at the port. And it's like he's just all over the place. And then what Republicans have to do is like, oh, no. I'm just making sure that the boat is just in good condition. It has nothing to do with the Trump's incompetence. And I'm going to go over that and basically show you what's really happening, the relationship between Vladimir Putin and Trump, right? So, because we have to go back and see why Republicans are now communist, pretty much. Republicans are now pretty much communist because of the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, right? And so, like I said, I'm going to go over the relationship between Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, right, and their history and everything. And kind of going into like a little bit of the impeachment proceedings, which I would like to do, but I didn't get a chance to do it. But it's going to do a little bit touch and go with that, right? And the kicker is how when Trump was president, he almost started World War III. He provoked World War III to actually happen. Obviously, it didn't pan out that way. They didn't, the country that he pretty much was poking the bear at didn't retaliate the same way as he did, right? They kind of took the, a way out. Trump has almost started World War III, but unlike Vladimir Putin, right? Vladimir Putin, he's a different type of beast. So what I'm going to do right now is just basically like show you, right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the relationship between Vladimir Putin and Trump and why their relationship and things that the both of them have been doing is extremely questionable. Regardless of what Republicans try to lie and tell you that, oh, it's speculation. Oh, no, they got nothing to do with each other. But here you are pointing a finger at NATO. And like in my rant there, the news radio guy was saying, Europe needs to step their game up. NATO needs to step their game up. Ukraine is a part of NATO. So like that's when I'm talking about the whole deflection tactic. It's like, how are you telling people to like you isolating Ukraine like they're not a part of NATO, like they're not a sovereign country, like they're the enemy. They keep everything is about NATO and Ukraine and not so much about Russia. Anyway, so I'm just going to get right into it.
With Russia would be a good thing, not a bad thing. And just about everybody agrees to that, except very stupid people. The man has very strong control over a country. Now, it's a very different system, and I don't happen to like the system. But certainly in that system, he's been a leader. Should Putin be in the G7? I said, no, he should be in the G8. Putin's a killer. A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent? So he's done an amazing job. He's put himself really as, a lot of people would say he's put himself at the forefront of the world as a leader. I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer.
Have you had any dealings with the Russians?
Well, I've done a lot of business with the Russians.
They're commies, you know that.
Well,
they're
commies.
tough.
They're smart and they're tough, and they're not looking so dumb right now, are they?
Well, there's Vladimir Putin. Have you ever met the guy?
Tough guy. I met him once. I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him. I don't know anything about him other than he will respect me. I never met Putin. This is not my best friend. Well, I have no relationship with him other than he called me a genius. He said Donald Trump is a genius. He says great things about me. I'm going to say great things about him. Thank you. I had a call with President Putin and congratulated him on the victory, his electoral victory.
You respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
President Obama wanted to get along with Russia, but the chemistry wasn't there. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability.
There you have it. A lot of ass kissing from Donald Trump, kissing Putin's ass. You see a lot of that, a lot of bowing down, a lot of admiration for him and all these other things that he just compliments Putin about, along with his lie saying that he never met Vladimir Putin on a campaign trail. Then all of a sudden, when he's president, he has all these visits, still praising him. This guy is a dictator. Even when you look at Bill O'Reilly, was like, okay, and Bill O'Reilly is right wing as you could get, and he's like, but the guy's a dictator. You know what I'm saying? He was on a talk show over there, and it was a late night show and stuff like that, and even he's a communist, and he's just like that. Even affect Trump. Trump didn't care at all. So I'm just setting the stage for you guys. So you guys can at least get some truth on what's going on. So right now, what I'm going to do, right, during the elections and during the whole election, during the whole campaign trail to when he actually became president, I'm going to give you a little bit more context of all the things that he was doing, right? There's a lot of things that he was doing. Like I said this before when I was on another podcast. Trump is like a mob boss, right? Everyone knows with organized crime, you have the head guy. The head guy doesn't do the grunt work. He got goons and buffoons and people around him that does that he orders them to do, right? So we all know, if you look at my previous videos before, right, you're going to see how I gave a long list of people that went to jail for helping Donald Trump do a lot of shady business dealings politically and ethically, mostly politically, like money laundering, right? And for, in this particular case, well, I'm not going to give it away, right? But we all know that he's not going to he's not going to be directly involved with his criminality. Donald Trump is stupid, but he's not that stupid, right? So I'm going to show you that, give you a little bit more context to this. Here you have right here from Vox, you have a Russian newspaper editor explains how Putin made Trump his puppet. And he quotes, they consider him a stupid, unstrategic politician. That sounds just about right. That sounds just about right. You can see the date on this. This is 2018, right? This is 2018. We already knew what Trump was about already, right? So this is, like I said, this is a Russian newspaper editor, right? So he is in tune with Russia and the people, you know, as far as like how the media is and how the people are, right? You see that right there. You can read that right there. Mikhail Fishman is editor-in-chief of the Moscow Times, an English-language weekly newspaper published in Moscow. The paper is well known for its criticism of Russia, President Vladimir Putin. Indeed, it was targeted twice in 2015 by Russian hackers and has been attacked repeatedly by pro-Kremlin pundits. Now, remember, Vladimir Putin, you can check this out for yourself. He had, just like Trump, he doesn't like politicians. He had one of his politicians, not one of his politicians, one of his media, like an anchor, right? You know, he had him assassinated, quote unquote, or who knows, air quotes, right? Because he spoke against Vladimir Putin, right? So there's pretty much an interview that they have right here. There's a part you can read. I'll scroll through it slowly so you could read it. You can pause it and read it. But there's a part that I want to get to. So, you know, read along if you want and stuff like that. So you can see Sean Illing is the person doing the interview for Mikhail, who is the Moscow newspaper editor. Right, so, you know, it says, from your person, Moscow, how do you see the strange relation between Putin and Trump? It is strange. It looks a bit irrational on Trump's part, to be sure, yada, yada, yada. That's the part I want to do. You're obviously referencing an explosive Trump dossier published by BuzzFeed in January. What makes you so skeptical of the claims in that dossier? Two things. For one, I've been a political journalist for 15 years working and dealing with sources in Russia and elsewhere. And frankly, a lot of this appears shallow to me. I'm sure Russia has plenty of dirt on Trump, but I can't accept without hard evidence much of what I've heard or read. Let's talk about Trump and Putin as individuals. How are they different? How are they similar? I don't think that was it. How they're different because these two are very obviously extreme, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that was the one I was looking for. Okay, there's a picture right here saying Russian President Vladimir Putin attends a meeting to discuss the Ukraine peace process at the German Federal Chancellery on October 19, 2016 in Berlin, Germany. Okay. Showing what is the precipitation of Trump in Russia? Is he seen at, this is it. What is the perception of Trump in Russia? Is he seen as an ally, a foe, a stooge? Mikhail, the vision of Trump is basically shaped by the Kremlin and their propaganda machine. That's what they do. During the election campaign, Trump was decided not as a underdog, but as an honest representative of the American people who was being mistreated by the establishment, elites, and other evil forces in Washington. Funny. Okay, the Kremlin knew that. So Sean Illing is asking, the Kremlin knew that to be bullshit, right? This was pure propaganda, not sincere reporting, and it was aimed at damaging Hillary Clinton. Mikhail says, but of course, Cumberland, no. But of course, all of it was aimed to damage Hillary Clinton. Putin expected Trump to lose. But the prospect of a Hillary victory terrified him, and he did everything possible to undermine her. Sean, why was he so afraid of a Clinton victory? Mikhail says because he knew that would mean an extension of the Obama's harsh orientation to Russia, perhaps even more aggressive than Obama. Putin has experienced some difficult years since his 2014 invasion of Crimea, but he didn't expect this level of isolation. He sees Trump as an opportunity to change the dynamic. See, so that's pretty much, this is coming from someone not an American, right? Not like someone like me or a Republican who may not be too in depth as far as like what the pulse of what's going on in Russia and what they think. It's coming from an actual Russian. So a lot of commentators here believe that most generous interpretation of Trump's fawning orientation to Putin and Russia is that he's hopelessly naive. Do you buy that? That's a good question. Why does he like Putin so much? I think Trump sees Putin as a kind of soulmate. Let's be honest. Trump is not a reflective person. He's quite simple in his thinking, and he's sort of attached to Putin's brutal forcefulness. Obviously, if anything, this is what Trump and Putin have in common. Exactly. So that's why Trump loves Putin. He loves Kim Jong-il. He's hugging him and said they wrote letters to each other. He called them love letters. He likes Duterte, right? Donald Trump loves dictators. He loves dictators, right? Has Putin made a puppet of Trump? Of course, comrade. This is certainly what the Kremlin believes, and they're acting accordingly. They're quite obvious playing Trump. They consider him a stupid, unstrategic politician. Putin is very confident that he can manipulate Trump to his advantage, and he should be. That's my Russian accent. Anyway, so, I mean, even the people in Russia knows that Trump is a puppet. Trump loves Putin and things like that. And this is way on the other side of the world, right? This is way on the other side of the world. In other words, Trump is a useful idiot to them. Exactly, Kumlet. The Kremlin is limited in their knowledge about what's going on in Washington, but they see the chaos and the confusion in Trump's administration. They see the clumsiness, the inexpensiveness. Naturally, they're working to exploit that. So, this is coming from Russia. Russian people. A man that's in media that is a Russian, right? So we got it from the other side of the world. Everyone understands this dynamic except for Republicans. Well, they choose not to understand. They choose not to understand because their leader says, their cult leader says, no, this, that. Russia is good. Love Vladimir Putin. So what do? Russia is good. Love Vladimir Putin. Everything that Trump says. Like Trump is like a mutant octopus because he got their hands all up Republicans' ass like puppets, just repeating what they're saying verbatim. Right? Whoa, but I have more.
Since his campaign in 2016, there's been a lot of attention on Donald Trump's connection with Russia. Personally, he's made his admiration for Russian President Vladimir Putin quite clear. And some of his administration members have either a long history of ties to the Russian state, pro-Russian views, or both. Back in August 2016, his campaign manager, Paul Manafort, resigned when it was revealed that he had been a paid consultant to Ukraine's pro-Russian former president. Since then,
Yes, Paul Manafort had resigned because they found that out, right? And he went to jail and he was sentenced. So he had that charge along with witness tampering, right? So all of that happened. And what did Donald Trump do? If you saw my other videos, he pardoned Paul Manafort.
then there have been allegations that the Trump campaign knew about Russia's hack of the election, improper contact with the Russian government, and even blackmail, resulting in several government investigations. In order to understand the scandals surrounding Trump and Russia, it's important to first distinguish the three main storylines. The first centers on Russia's interference in the U.S. presidential election. The second revolves around former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. And the third concerns a private intelligence report that claims Russians are blackmailing Trump, known as the Steele dossier. Let's start with the first. In June 2016, WikiLeaks began publishing private emails hacked from the Democratic National Committee. At the time, Russia was the main suspect, but this remained unconfirmed. Emails from the hack continued to be leaked throughout the summer, always targeting the Clinton campaign.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
In August 2016, close Trump confidant Roger Stone
He's like messaging he's messaging to Russia directly. He's enabling them to do it. Like, wow, this is crazy.
Stone said he was in touch with WikiLeaks.
I actually have communicated with Assange. I believe the next tranche of his documents pertain to the Clinton Foundation, but there's no telling what the outcome.
On October 2nd, Stone sent a tweet appearing to show inside knowledge of an upcoming WikiLeaks publication targeting Clinton. On October 7th, WikiLeaks released the first batch of hacked emails from Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta. Now, on the same day, a joint statement by Obama's National Security Advisor and the Department of Homeland Security officially declared that the DNC hacks were intended to interfere with the U.S. election, and that they believed that only Russia's senior-most officials could have authorized these activities. On December 10th, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybkov said that there were contacts with Trump's entourage throughout the election, and that quite a few have been staying in touch with Russian representatives. On January 6th, the CIA, FBI, and NSA together released a report confirming that Putin had ordered the attacks and intended to hurt the Clinton campaign specifically. On February 14th and 15th, phone records reportedly show that members of Trump's campaign and other Trump associates made frequent contact with Russian officials during their campaign. While U.S. intelligence is still investigating Russian interference, the big unknown is, did the Trump campaign know about Russian hacks targeting Clinton? Now, the second scandal involves Trump's former National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn. It's related to the first because it begins on December 29th, when the Obama administration announced a series of new sanctions on Russia as punishment for its interference in the election. On the same day, Michael Flynn called Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak multiple times. Flynn was not in office yet, but has a long-standing relationship with Russia. On December 30th, Putin announced that they would not retaliate against the sanctions, a move that Trump publicly praised on Twitter. Now, this led some to suspect that the Trump administration was telling Russia that they would rethink the sanctions once they were in office. On January 12th, news of the Flynn calls broke. Press Secretary Sean Spicer and Vice President Mike Pence each told reporters that the calls were not about sanctions. On January 24th, Flynn told FBI investigators that he did not discuss sanctions in the phone call. Sometime in late January, Acting Attorney General Sally Yates told the White House legal counsel that she believed Flynn was lying to the Trump administration about what he talked about on the phone call with Kislyak, which would make Flynn potentially vulnerable to Russian blackmail. On February 9th, the Washington Post confirmed that Flynn had spoken about sanctions with Kislyak because the FBI had Kislyak's phone under surveillance. The report said Flynn urged Kislyak to not react to Obama's sanctions because the incoming Trump administration would be reconsidering them. On February 13th, Flynn resigned, saying he had given Pence and others incomplete information about his conversations with Kislyak. On February 16th, the House Intelligence Committee announced that it's including Flynn in its investigation of Russian interference in the U.S. election. So at this point, the big unknown is whether Trump knew Flynn had reached out to Russia to discuss the sanctions. 3 is by far the most bizarre and the least confirmed. It begins sometime during the summer of...
See, so when people say, oh, that didn't happen, it's speculation. No, it's not speculation as far as the accusations. Everything that happened is factual. What the unknown is trying to, all those illegal things that was happening around Trump, they can't link it to Trump. They don't know if Trump knew what was going on. That's what they're trying to prove. They say if Trump knew what's going on. There's no way you're going to tell me that all the things these people were doing, right, that works under Trump, they were doing it and Trump had no idea what was going on whatsoever so far, right? Look at all these things, all these events that's happening from the campaign trail to when he gets in office. All these people that are around him, he doesn't know anything about it. They're just going on their own accord, on their own whim. That's total bullshit.
Summer of 2016, when intelligence documents began circulating around the U.S. intelligence community and media organizations. The documents were from a former British intelligence agent who was hired by Republicans and Democrats to investigate Trump. The documents claim Russia has information they could use to blackmail Trump. They also allege that Trump and Russia exchanged information during the campaign to hurt Clinton. On January 10th, BuzzFeed published the entire unverified report after CNN reported that Trump and Obama had been briefed on it. On February 10th, CNN reported that investigators had in fact verified a minor part of the report.
But now, multiple current and former U.S. law enforcement and intelligence officials tell CNN that intelligence intercepts of foreign nationals confirm that some of the conversations described in the dossier took place between the same individuals on the same days.
At this point, investigations into the report continue, and the question of whether Russia could blackmail Trump remains unanswered. These 3 scandals continue, and there are many unanswered questions. But what is clear is that the uncertainty surrounding Trump and Russia is not going to go away anytime soon.
So I set the stage up a little bit. So now we're going to go currently, and you're going to see what I'm getting at, right? Just remember all those things as far as like the relationship with Trump. I did that to debunk any Republicans who are basically cheerleading Russia or burying their head in the sand because of Trump and Trump's allegiance with Vladimir Putin, his admiration of Vladimir Putin. So going to the whole Ukraine incident, right? So you have Joe Biden, Putin, and Zelensky. He's the president or whatever of Ukraine. He wanted to join NATO. Now Ukraine signed up for NATO in 2010, but they're not officially a part of NATO yet. There's certain steps and things that they have to do in order to be a part of NATO. You can check it out. Zelensky, leading up to this, Zelensky wanted to, pretty much be part of the EAU, the European Union, and also along with that, he also wanted to be part of NATO. But they were a little bit reluctant because of the whole tension and turmoil that it may cause. Now, Vladimir Putin, I discovered, supplies Europe with oil and gas and all those other things. He supplies them with a good amount of that. So taking sides in Ukraine is kind of like going against what Putin wants. So they're at an impasse right now. They're at a stalemate, right? So that's where everything is right now when it comes to that. So the whole thing, people are saying, hey, it's about NATO. It's about NATO. That's why Vladimir Putin invaded, right? So Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, which was what they're saying basically it used to be a part of the USSR. It used to be part of the old school Russia, and they say that's why he wants to invade it for that reason. They say what provoked the attack is Putin didn't want NATO in Ukraine because he thought is kind of encroaching on his area, and he kind of saw that as a threat. But remember, this whole time there was negotiations going back and forth and stuff like that, and Putin pretty much told how he felt about NATO, right? So that's what they're saying. So there was a lot of diplomatic diplomacy going on all ends, right? It was not a military threat on Putin at all, as far as NATO. Like I said, it was still on the stage of diplomacy. Well, is it kind of poking the bear if you're gonna, want Ukraine to be part of NATO? Yeah, you could say that. Kind of. You could kind of say that. But U.S. intelligence said, and I said it before, that Putin was already planning to do this, right? He's just only saying, "Oh, I don't want to be part of NATO." That's kind of encroaching on my so-called quote unquote sovereignty as being in Russia and all this other stuff. If that is the case, you would not respond with an all-out military attack, right? You make like probably like a like a little threat or something like that, hint or something like that, or saying you would do it in a diplomatic way. Doing this is all out war. This is obviously an act of war, because they always know that he wanted Ukraine, to the point where he has Chernobyl. Anyone knows anything about Chernobyl? That's where back in the day the USSR, the old school Russia, had nuclear, where they had their nuclear program. So what happened is like there was a crack or something happened, a lot of radiation spilled out. There was an accident there, to the point where there's a lot of radiation there. So they had to put a lot of concrete and bury it. Anyone knows anything about nuclear energy and stuff like that, it doesn't, go away or dissipate for hundreds of years, or maybe thousands of years, depending on how big of that nuclear reactor is. So he's threatening, obviously, to say, hey, look, if you guys don't do what I say and all this other stuff, whatever, I'm going to bomb the reactor and crack that concrete. It'll just be a whole nuclear spill all over that part of Europe, which is bad news, right? So now we're coming to my whole point of this. This is what people, mostly Republicans, are not saying as far as like the dynamic. Now, I would say one thing that Republicans are saying and they're hinting on. I do believe, despite how crooked Donald Trump is and a liar and a thief that he is, I feel if Donald Trump was in office still, Putin would have no need to invade Ukraine. Trump would probably give him a bunch of green flags, do certain things, and say it's pretty much out of his hand and stuff like that. But I think, let's say you probably had like a stronger president or something like that, like instead of Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is weak, and I think that's the reason why Putin feels like, I can just go in there. What Biden's going to do? He's full of hot air and all this other stuff. Biden puts no fear in my heart or whatever. So I think Vladimir Putin is a very, very strong, how should I put it? He's very strong in playing military chess in that way. And he has no problem calling your bluff, right? So you have someone that's a little bit stronger, like in the articles that I said, like Hillary Clinton or the Obamas, or someone who's a little bit more, has a better idea, grasp on foreign policy and don't play. He would have thought twice to do that, because remember, he always wanted to do this since the Obama administration, but he didn't dare do it, right? So this is my point that I wanted to mention right now, why all these Republicans are being totally dishonest. Want to talk about Hunter Biden, want to talk about all these, well, Biden is responsible for it because how are you responsible for the next man invading? He didn't poke the bear necessarily. He did not poke the bear. They were doing diplomatic having diplomatic discussions about where Ukraine is going to be, right? Biden is not responsible for that. That's stupid. But one thing I'm going to tell you right now that you're going to be very surprised about, and like all Republicans, they forget the shit that they've done. The person who almost caused World War III, and they all forgot, is obviously Trump. Remember this? When Trump almost started World War III by killing Soleimani? It was crazy. Everybody thought it was about to be a wrap. I do not understand how people could forget this. This is Trump going after Iran's top general. Now don't get me wrong, they had issues going back and forth, kind of something that Trump kind of created himself because he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, right? So that set the ball rolling, right? He did that. So Iran, they did their little attacks and blockades and things like that. It was like back and forth like that. Trump didn't even poke the bear. He shot the bear in the head. So when he targeted Soleimani, it was crazy. Like, it was crazy. Iran said they're gonna get the United States back, all these other things. But I'll show y'all some videos so you could jog your memory back. This is the things that Republicans love to forget and do the finger pointing. Everything every fuck up that Trump does, they try to either ignore it, or if they do address it, it's on a micro level. Like, oh, it's not that really big a deal, even when it's a big deal. Joe Biden didn't do anything to really antagonize Vladimir Putin. Putin wanted to do this attack anyway. He wanted to do this attack anyway. And here you have Republicans putting their head in the sand, making excuses for Russia, and all these other things. But let's do a little flashback.
World War III is beginning to trend on social media, and the U.S. killing of Iran's General Qasem Soleimani has brought tensions in the Middle East to a new level. Soleimani was the leader of Iran's Quds Force, an elite military group of about 10,000, whose purpose is to train and organize militias across the region in what's known as a proxy network. It's part of Iran's strategy to achieve security, especially against enemies like the US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, which Iran alone would never be able to fight. The proxies include Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq, and the National Defense Force in Syria. The proxies get funding, training, and weaponry from Iran, in addition to political indoctrination. In 2018, President Donald Trump broke the Iran nuclear deal.
That's a deal to hurt the world. That's not a deal for the United States.
Backpedaling on President Barack Obama's efforts and escalating tensions in the region. Trump then reinstated financial and economic sanctions on Iran and labeled Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist organization. Iran attacked U.S. allied oil tankers and infrastructure in the Gulf region, among other things, and the tit-for-tat battles continued. But those tensions pale in comparison to the U.S. killing of Soleimani. Experts say neither nation wants an all-out war, but this killing could be a tipping point.
Wish I knew what all the now whats were. I quite agree with what Andrea and Cal have said. There will be terrible, terrible reprisals. They will likely happen in the Middle East, but they could happen really anywhere in the world. And as both of these journalists have pointed out, we have people all over the world that could become targets. And of course, our military in Iraq are targets. Our embassy in Baghdad is a target. Lebanon is a likely place to be targeted.
With that little flashback, do y'all remember now? Yeah, that was kind of scary too. And everyone was, rightfully so, was blaming Trump because he was continuously fucking up, and he kind of was bringing it on the whole world, starting World War III, to the point they had all types of funny memes, and it was funny, but then it wasn't funny, right? So this is the whole hypocrisy here that no one is mentioning at all, where you have two potential situations where World War III could happen, right? Good thing the one for Trump didn't happen. You still have a little bit of competent people that was there, like General Mattis, that he loves, but eventually got rid of. I don't remember if he got rid of Mattis or Mattis just walked away, right? Can't remember. But at least he still had competent people, whoever was left in his cabinet, besides his family, because his family, people want to talk about Hunter Biden, his whole family, like Jared Kushner, his daughter was all in the government. They have no experience in government whatsoever, including Donald Trump, but he has all his family in his cabinet. Imagine if Obama did something like that, had like Jeremiah Wright. I love that brother. Had Jeremiah Wright and all these other people from Black Chicago inside the cabinet. We will never hear the end of it. But since it's Donald Trump, and Republicans are just nothing but Republicans look like they're at a whole bunch of Cheetos. You remember when you eat Cheetos and cheese puffs? You always got the orange cheese on your lips and on your hands. That's what a Trump fan is, because all they do is kiss his ass, kiss his orange cheesy ass, and that's what they look like to me. So anyway, this was a thing. This is the flashback. And if you don't believe that, right, about Trump's loyalty to Putin, and if you don't, you're a fucking idiot. I don't care. You're a fucking idiot, and you're just a loyalist to the point where common sense is not supposed to make sense to you at all. Trump even went ahead during this whole thing of Putin invading Ukraine, killing people. This is what Trump said.
Very public during every step of his response to Russia's actions in Ukraine. Normally, in the face of a foreign conflict, politicians from both political parties stand united, but not this time. Former President Donald Trump, during a radio interview, recalled his relationship with the Russian leader.
Thank you very much.
Praising his moves in Ukraine.
Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There were more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace all right. No, but think of it. Here's a guy who's very savvy.
And he's not alone. His former Secretary of State also weighed in early in the crisis.
Very shrewd. Very capable. I have enormous respect for him. I've been criticized for saying that. No, I have enormous respect for him. He was also an interlocutor that was always well-informed and deeply clear about what Russian interests were.
Experts say this could have an impact.
Trump's words have a big impact, especially on his followers. And we see some people in the Republican Party, elected officials, as well as some, watchers, say viewers of Fox News and people on the far right, who, agree with Trump, right? And they, see the United States as a place that in some ways should be more like Russia, right? It should be more authoritarian.
A recent poll seems to back up the idea that the Republican Party is shifting. 62% of Republicans and GOP-leaning independents said Putin is a stronger leader than President Biden, while an additional 25% declined to choose between the American and Russian president. The White House is dismissing Trump's comments.
Well, as a matter of policy, we try not to take advice from anyone who praises President Putin and his military strategy, which I believe is what happened there.
The U.S. president has been focused on keeping his allies united, while at home, his predecessor tried to make sure his country is not.
has decided to continue his ongoing pro-Putin campaign with a pretty gross speech at Mar-a-Lago. And he also continued criticism toward Joe Biden while posturing as someone who would somehow take a tougher stance on Vladimir Putin, which is hilarious. Now, he went on Laura Ingram's show, and not only did he continue to spew some pro-Putin nonsense, he also made a fool out of himself by getting real confused about which country is invading which part of the world. Let's watch.
We're just learning that U.S. officials are looking at a potential amphibious landing now in Odessa, Ukraine. Again, a month ago or 3 weeks ago, all the so-called experts were saying that, Putin was probably going to just be content with staying in those separatist regions. But I think given what's unfolded, sadly, with a lot of weakness in the United States, they just decided to go for it. I mean, it looks like they're going for it. And where does that leave NATO, the NATO alliance? The NATO alliance.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's what happened. He was going to be satisfied with a peace, and now he sees the weakness and the incompetence and the stupidity of this administration. And as an American, I'm angry about it, and I'm saddened by it.
President Trump, we actually have, just hold on. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we have, we're going to the Pentagon, I believe. Ukraine is speaking at the UN. Now we basically have the Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations looking like a defeated man. Your final reaction?
Well, I think the whole thing, again, would have never happened. It shouldn't happen. And it's a very sad thing. But you know what's also very dangerous is you told me about the amphibious attack by Americans. You shouldn't be saying that because you and everybody else shouldn't know about it. They should do that secretly, not be doing that through the great Laura Ingraham. They should be doing that secretly. Nobody should know that, Laura. And
that was the Russian. Those are the Russian amphibious landing.
I thought you said that. I thought you said that we were sending people in.
No, I did not. No. That would be news.
No, but he didn't think that Laura Ingraham said that the United States was doing that attack, because immediately after she announced the attack, Trump responded to it by pointing out how weak Biden is. And if it weren't for this incompetent administration, Russia wouldn't be doing this. So at some point in the middle of that segment, he either completely forgot about who did that attack or just decided to throw the truth out and move on with some other talking point. I don't know what that was, but I know what it was. But I think he just forgot. He literally responded to the Russian attack immediately after Laura Ingraham mentioned it, and then forgot that it was Russia that did the attack later in the segment.
It's called dementia, and so I don't know if it's what particular ailment that he has, mental ailment, but he clearly has one. And guys, your only other explanation, if you're a right winger, no, he didn't get, he's not a bumbling old fool. He didn't get confused. He thought that Laura Ingraham had said that it was the Americans who did an amphibious thing. Now, break that one down. You think the former president goes on a talk show and finds out there that the Americans are in an actual battle with Russian soldiers? That would be massive news. That wouldn't be a little news. That would be gigantic news. He doesn't even know that. He thinks like, oh yeah, I might have found out on Laura Ingram's show. Like if I was on Laura Ingram's show and she said the Americans have landed in Ukraine and are fighting the Russians, I'd be like, when the hell did that happen? That's insane. Oh my God, we're gonna go to World War III. That's a normal reaction. And I was never president. He was the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, American amphibious landing in Odessa. Yeah, that makes sense. What? No, okay, so your best excuse is, no, he's the dumbest man alive and doesn't realize that would be a massive development in world news. Just doesn't even get it. Like, oh, maybe she just mentioned it in passing.
Yeah, I mean, and also it reveals how little Trump really cares about this very issue. Every single time he's talked about it, he's used it as an opportunity to point out that he believes the election was stolen from him in 2020, and this is the ramification of him not being in charge. In every single interview I've seen on this matter, that is what he does. He immediately pivots to, the election was stolen from me, and this is what you get when I'm not in charge.
But by the way, look, so on a normal
all the other details are irrelevant to him. Like,
yeah.
He doesn't care.
But guys, if you've had loved ones that go through this, and I feel terrible for almost anyone but Trump going through this, because he's got 40% of the country following him when he's lost his mind. What people going through this kind of mental decline go through is a lot of different symptoms. And one of them is constantly going back and talking about the same thing over and over and over again, and being obsessed with themselves, telling stories about themselves over and over again. I mean, Trump already was a nuclear level narcissist, but when you've got the mental decline, sometimes people get further detached from others and get into their own world. And so that's what Trump does in every interview. Like, okay, now back to me, we're going to have World War III. He thinks, not us, but he thought in the middle of that interview, Russia and America might be in a hot war where they're firing against one another, which endangers the entire planet. And he thought, back to me. And about how I was a victim here. Well, we're talking about Ukraine. Oh, the election, the rigged election.
It's always about him.
Yeah, that was another part of the interview. And it's now gotten so embarrassing. Did you notice why we kept that part in the clip? Laura Ingraham went to something else. They went to a Ukrainian diplomat talking while the former president was on the line.
Yeah, I know. That is pretty breathtaking.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, it's clown Trump.
Yeah.
He's calling to cry again.
Yeah.
He's not going to talk about this issue. Our audience likes him. But hey, you know what? Diplomat XYZ, the undersecretary is talking. Let's go to him because this guy's a national embarrassment.
That's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoy it. You know, just basically just put people's feet to the fire that want to talk about other things besides what is really going on, right? So Justin, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you. Peace, and enjoy this little clip.
I know words. I have the best words.
Do you have a relationship with Vladimir Putin?
I do have a relationship with him, and I think he's done a very brilliant and amazing job. He's put himself, really, as you know, a lot of people would say he's put himself at the forefront of the world as a leader. Russia is like, I mean, they're really hot stuff.
Do you like Vladimir Putin's comments about you?
Sure. When people call you brilliant, it's always good, especially when the person heads up Russia.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also, he kills journalists that don't agree with him.
Well, I think our country does plenty of killing also, Joe, so.